Have you ever stood outside, looked at a vibrant sunset, and thought to yourself, this has to be photoshopped? Hello, my friend. My name is Colby Bloom, and welcome to day one of Painting the Wilderness World of Color. This is a 10-day challenge, 10-day watercolor challenge focused on painting all sorts of landscape and seascape scenes in watercolor, and specifically, we are looking at some really cool color combinations. For our first day, we are painting a scene I like to call Sky Candy. I called it Sky Candy because the sky is full of so many vibrant colors, and actually a gradient like this, a blend of all of these really just mouth-watering hues, it's easier to put together than you might think. This tutorial is totally doable for beginners. It would also be an excellent springboard for any maybe more challenging projects you might like to do if you are a little bit more experienced, and I think you're going to love it. So without further ado, let's dive in. Before we start painting, let's prep our sketchbook. So this is an upcycled sketchbook, which basically just means it's an old book that has been rebound with watercolor paper, with Arches watercolor paper. And just a reminder, if you would like to know any of the supplies that I'm using, the supplies list is down below. You can click the link and it will take you to the supplies list for the challenge. So before we get started, this is cold pressed paper, 100% cotton, 140 pound, 300 GSM Arches brand paper, and I am using some Holbein soft tape, which is basically just paper tape, to tape around the edges. So I'm taping. The way that I put the tape on the paper is I do the sides first and then I do top and bottom so that none of the tape's adhesive side touches any other adhesive side, so you can take everything off fairly easily. So you don't have to use this brand of tape. You could also use painter's tape or washi tape or masking tape. That's basically what these are anyway. So I am taping down the sides of the paper, and then I'm going to use binder clips on the three non-bound sides of this sketchbook, particularly since I'm using a sketchbook, just to keep the paper in place even more. This isn't always necessary, but I'm doing it this time. I also put something heavy, in this case my jar of Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White, on the other side of the sketchbook just to keep it down so it doesn't start flipping up all over. All right, let's prep the surface for painting. So this is a mop brush. You don't need one, but it's handy to have one. I soaked it with water and I wet the whole page first. Not with puddles, but just enough so that it's nice and shiny and wet. And then I'm grabbing a number 10 round brush and getting it really watery and using some watery Quinacridone Gold to paint just the corner of that page. And then I mixed a little Quinacridone Gold with Opera Pink to get this kind of mid-pink color. And I started painting a little bit into the Quinacridone Gold. Now, we're using the wet on wet technique here, which just means that we're using wet paint, watery wet paint, on a wet surface so that we get these nice blends. Sometimes I'm painting with paint, other times I'm painting with water. See, and right now I'm using what's called a thirsty brush, which is where I've wet the brush, blotted it on a towel so it's damp, and then I pushed down onto the page to kind of lift the paint. The whole purpose of me doing this is I want to lay down colors, but I also want to leave behind some pockets of white space, or at least lighter space. Because watercolor is transparent, you can create what's called luminosity, which just means the white of the paper is shining through. And so we want to maintain a lot of luminosity, especially toward that bottom right corner where the sun is shining out of it. So while the paper is still wet, I took some Quinacridone Rose and I started painting just from the left side, but I only painted with the paint that very first stroke, and then I'm using water the rest of the time. So I rinse my brush and I'm just using water to kind of slowly blend it toward the right and up. I'm still leaving behind pockets of white space, you'll see. And then I let that layer dry all the way. You can let it dry naturally, in which case you'd probably leave it alone for like 30 or 40 minutes, or you can use a heat tool like I did. Now I'm gonna re-wet. I'm going to re-wet with clean water, and then in that top left-hand corner, I'm using phthalo blue so that I can paint that top blue. But again, only that very first stroke I used the blue, and then I'm using water the rest of the time to kind of gently blend it in. Now, as I'm blending this blue down, I have a little bit more leeway to blend further down on the left side because I'm blending into the rose. But on the right side, I want to be a little more cautious because it's more yellow on the right side, right? So if I blend the blue down too far on the yellow, then it'll turn green. And I don't really want that. I don't really want a green color. And so I'm using a thirsty brush again, just a damp brush to lift the blue away from the yellow so I don't get as much green. And then laying down a bit more concentrated phthalo blue on that upper left-hand side. And I don't want to completely overtake the rose, although it's okay if you do. You can always add more if you want to. I don't want to completely overtake it. I still want some of that bottom to be pink. But I do want there to be some kind of middle part between the phthalo blue and the Quinacridone Rose where we get purple, right? Because blue and magenta mix to create purple and mix to create violet. And so that's kind of, this is called sky candy because there's just so many delicious colors going on. So I added a bit more Quin Rose, I added a bit more Quin Gold under the Quin Rose. And at this point, I'm just kind of like going at my own pace, kind of doing my own thing, messing around. And as you're messing around, adding different colors, you do want to be aware that, for example, when the blue and the gold mix together, you might create some green, you might get some muddy mixes, and so you can always lift. And it'll be really, really easy to accidentally cover up any luminosity, and so by using too much paint. And so you can always lift and use lots of water to kind of mix between the colors and add lots of buffer, lots of like little white space clouds as you're moving along. It's going to be super messy, but the end result, it doesn't really matter where the colors are. Mostly we just want to make sure that bottom right-hand corner is really light so we can still see the yellow, but we do want lots of white space, which means that we have used lots of watery paint and we haven't really painted much on it after that, right? And so that will be kind of the end result here. Now, for the sky. Now we're going to paint the layers of mountains. So I took some Payne's gray with just a little bit of phthalo blue in it also, and then lots of water, like so much water. And I started painting this mountain starting a little bit like a third up from that left-hand side, and then all the way down so that it kind of dips under the page and then over onto that right side. Because remember, we want to highlight the light in this. Scene, right? So we don't want to paint over that white space area that we created. We want to make sure to showcase it. And so one way to showcase light, especially if you're showcasing light in the sky, is to paint a silhouette, a mountain silhouetted on top of the sky, but then use like a valley in the mountain, right? Like use like a dip in the mountain to come to almost like frame that area where the sun is going to be. And so I used a really, really watery version of that very first. For that first layer, I'm going to do 3 layers. And then I added a little bit more color, right? So I added a bit more Payne's gray to this. And when you're painting mountain layers especially, it's okay to cover up a lot of the previous one, but you do want to leave behind pockets of that previous one, right? And you also want to make them look different. So I didn't make that mountain layer the very darkest it could be because it's the mid layer, but I let it dry all the way. And now this is the darkest layer, this third layer. It's going to be the darkest layer. So I had it go up a little bit and then down, but I still don't want to cover up that light space, right? I still want to make it so like the mountain is framing that just like brilliant sunny spot coming out from behind it. And then I'm adding lots of dark pigment so that top mountain looks like a really fun contrast. One thing, especially if you're trying to showcase luminosity and brilliant colors, is to use dark contrasting shapes on top of it. Because the sky might have looked washed out before, but especially with the really dark mountain in front of it, it really brightens everything up. And so I also want to note I used Payne's gray, not black. so that it didn't wash out. So so that the contrast is a little bit more vibrant. And now I was going to be done, but I'm thinking I'm going to do one last thing. I'm going to add some birds. And I was kind of thinking about it, which is why my brush was like hovering over. And I decided I'm going to add the birds in kind of like a 3-point position. So to start, I'm giving myself a little bit of an outline. So I'm using a number 2 brush with Payne's Gray, light value Payne's Gray, and I'm painting some dots where I think I want the birds to be. It's gonna be like a big flock of birds. So I'm starting in the bottom right, and then I'm moving to like the top of that peak, and then I'm going up above, so that like the bottom right's the furthest right, the peak is the furthest left, and then up above is kind of off center in the middle of those. And then I painted a flock of birds, like a guideline for the flock of birds using dots, and then I'm painting the birds. So the thing when you're painting flocks of birds is basically it's just like a V, whether it's upside down or sideways, and then you have a little blob at the bottom and a little blob in between. So it's like a little beak and a little tail. And when you're painting birds, you want to paint 1 or 2 that look kind of like bigger, but then you want them to be different sizes, you want them to be different shapes. And if you think about painting them in terms of clusters, that can be a really, really helpful thing to remember. Like, you're not trying to paint a line of birds, you're trying to paint various clusters of birds kind of connected together, right? That's what's going to make them look a little bit more natural. So, and I honestly, I think like the more birds, the better. It can look really cool. So I just painted a whole bunch and like starting, and then the biggest birds are at the top, and then they slowly get smaller and smaller as at the bottom right-hand corner. Those birds are tiny. Some of them are still dots. I didn't even like put wings or beaks on them. I just left them as dots. But the shape of the V, so like the direction of the V, making just a few of them pretty big, but then most of them really small and then getting smaller. That's going to give us the illusion of depth in the piece, right? That's going to help us see that like, oh, some of these birds are closer, those are the big ones, and then some of these birds are really far away, those are the small ones. And I like to especially use the light space where the sun is to showcase the really small ones so that you can still see that they're there. And that wraps it up. That is sky candy. So, just to kind of sum up what we did 2 layers of sky. The first layer, we did the yellow with Opera Rose, Quinacridone Gold with Opera Rose and Quin Rose. And then we let that dry, and then we did the Phthalo Blue and extra layers of Quin Rose and Quin Gold. Then we let the sky dry. We made sure to use lots of water with the sky, right? Lots of water to produce that really delicious luminosity. Then we used Payne's Gray with a little bit of Phthalo Blue to create layers of mountain, lightest layers in the back, darkest layers in the front, with a little dip on the right side to showcase the sun. And then we created the birds. And the way that we formatted them was kind of in like that 3-point shape, so that they have a little bit of movement to add to the scene. And we used dots to outline the birds first so that we knew where they were going to go. And then we painted the birds using various directions of a V shape with a little blob in the front and a little blob in the back for a beak and a tail. And made just a couple kind of bigger, and then mostly getting smaller so that we can see that distance effect. All right, so this is one of my favorite things I like to do, right? I like to think about what I loved about this project and what I learned about this project. So some of the things that I loved all of the delicious blends. I loved the formatting of the birds. I always love adding birds. I think that they're a really fun detail element to add. And I really love the contrast between like the blurry, colorful sky with the sharp, dark mountains and the birds. I think that those contrasts worked really, really well. Some things that I learned is that when you're painting sky, you might need to lift sometimes, right? Like in order to maintain luminosity, you might not get it right the first time. So you kind of need to use a towel or a thirsty brush to lift away some spare pigment. You need to use a lot of water. And if your sky looks kind of dull and not so vibrant at first, just add a really, really, really dark element and it might make it pop a little bit even more. I also learned that giving an outline for birds can really help. And if when in doubt, just add more birds. That I think can help to eliminate some, some wonky looking birds also. So this was such a really fun project for me to do. I hope that you enjoyed yourself, and I would love to see your projects. Yeah, please tag me. I want to see. Thanks for painting with me.